Shalom, this is the first class on Gemara standards, history. We're looking at the history of the Talmud, and this is covering the period of Pre-Tanaim. Okay, and this class, it's odd because we're not going to understand what Tanaim means until the third year, but this is the period before the Tanaim and before the Zugos. The Torah was given at Har Sinai to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu was given two things, two areas of knowledge. He was giving the Torah Shebechtav. When we take out a Sefer Torah, what we read is the written Torah, and the Torah Shebal Peh, which was an oral explanation of the Torah. Those were the two things that Moshe was given. The Torah Shebal Peh, the oral Torah, is consistent of three real things. It's an explanation of what the psukim meant. There are certain psukim that we don't understand at face value. In a literal sense, they can't be true. So there's an explanation of what those psukim meant. The second thing is principles of law. So principles that apply to all mitzvahs across the board. Examples of those would be that a positive command women are exempt from. That doesn't apply to any one specific mitzvah. That applies to all mitzvahs. It goes across the board. So that's a principle of law. And then there are also actual laws that are not listed in the Torah that we learn from the Torah Shebal Peh. Those are the three things that Torah Shebal Peh is consistent of. Now, from the time that Moshe Rabbeinu got the Torah until today, the Masorah continues through teaching the Torah, through teaching the laws, these principles, and the development as halachas decided by the Sanhedrin. So the way it works is that when people have a question as to a modern issue or problem or situation that arises or a new invention, what we do is the chief carriers of the Masorah, the people that follow along the law, they carry this Masorah through the laws of the Sanhedrin, through the votes of the Sanhedrin. Now that doesn't apply until today. This is really only until the times of Bavel. But the Sanhedrin would be the ones who would decide what the law was. And the way they would decide that is by taking the principles of the Torah Shebal Peh, taking previous laws, and putting them on the new situation. So an example that I could give to clarify this is when, let's imagine, a car was invented. So Moshe Rabbeinu would never be able to tell you if you could drive a car on Shabbat. So how is it that the rabbis, when cars were invented, decided that cars could not be driven on Shabbat? Very simple. We have a principle and a law that you can't light a fire on Shabbat. When you start a car's ignition, there's a spark that is lit, and that's what starts the car. So by applying a previous law or a previous principle to a new invention, we thereby learn how the law applies today. So when we look at, just to review, on Har Sinai, Moshe was given Torah Shebal Peh and Torah Shebechtav. Torah Shebechtav, the written Torah, consisted of what we have in a Sefer Torah today, the mitzvos and the stories that we have today. And it also has Torah Shebal Peh was given to Moshe at Har Sinai, and that was consistent of three things: explanations of psukim, principles of the law, and actual laws that were not written down in the Torah Shebechtav, in the written Torah. The law was continued, the Masorah was continued from Har Sinai until Bavel by taking new situations, new issues, new problems that came up, new cases, and applying the principles that were taught at Har Sinai to these new cases. And that's really the history, pre-Tanaim, before we get into an actual Gemara, of what was happening before the Tanaim. Shalom.